this is almost like his trip through the box.
Actually, if you read the book, there's a part it goes click.
It probably sounds like to outsiders that maybe we're trashing the show.
I want money.
Nitpick, nitpick.
Otherwise, we're going
Yes,
back in the box and we're playing with giant hornets.
I'm not going back in that box.
I'm gonna buy a car. Gonna quit my job. We got investors.
Yeah, take off our tap dancing shoes. Let's put on our clogs and let's river dance our way to.
I love Lord of the Dance. Hello and welcome to Road Goes Ever On and On. Today, Sterling and I are talking about the 5th episode of the Apple TV series Dark Matter. So, spoilers ahead. And if you're enjoying the content, just give us a like, hit that subscribe button, and hit that bell for notifications. That way we can stay up to date in your feed. And with that, Sterling, should we talk about the rules and controlling the box?
Yes, absolutely. I did think it was kind of interesting watching Jason, One, and Amanda trying to figure out the rules. And I did like the different techniques that they used. As far as like, it's interesting that it's thoughts, subconscious, and intentions have to be aligned. And so it's interesting watching somebody like very logical thinking of like, okay, how do I do this? What if we speak something out loud? And then it's like, okay, no, our subconscious is still like playing tricks. Okay, well, you can't focus on something else if you're writing. Like that focuses you on what you're doing, but it's like even that still doesn't quite work. I thought it was in. I did like that part of like them trying the different parts.
I liked that part too. I thought it was, a great way to show that the box is very fickle. But
Yeah.
also, to me, it would seem like, okay, as people that are scientists, right?
Yes.
It would almost seem to me like right off the bat, like maybe your intentions for controlling the box aren't tied to the box, because like like they do have these moments where things line up where it's like, oh, yesterday you were talking about your mom with cancer, now you saw your family dying of an illness, and it was
Right.
like, well, that was yesterday, but like, and then like the giant thing of water, like I would start to think like, oh wait, maybe the box isn't controlled by your thoughts. Like there hasn't really been any like proving data to them that that's what controls the box.
Considering the fact that your subconscious has an impact on this, and it's kind of an amalgamation of both of them potentially, I still don't understand how Jason 2 has completely gotten Layton to like wipe his brain from being able to have an effect so that Jason 2 can still control the bot, because it seems like he has great control.
Yeah, he
You
seems like he
know,
can go wherever he wants, whenever he wants.
he was able to pop right back to his universe and grab those bags. So it's not just like he's getting, in the right ballpark. He's getting exactly where he needs to go when he needs to go. I do have some thoughts on that.
Okay.
I don't have thoughts on like how Leighton isn't affecting it, but I do have some thoughts on why Jason has like such great control. We'll talk
Because
about him when we get to him.
it does almost seem like you have to almost like have the mind of a monk, right? Like just
Yeah.
completely
Yep.
clear thoughts, not like even control of your subconscious thoughts, and with that you're able to travel the universe. But for some reason, like Jason too, who also seems like he might be stressed with what's going on with Daniela, can still travel the box very easily.
People work their entire lives to try and reach that state of inner peace where they can, have complete control of their thoughts. There's even people like there's some religious groups that go through practices that in the very end basically torture and probably will end in them not just suffering but potentially dying in pursuit of getting to that final, almost like nirvana where you are at one with things. It is very wild the level of control that you need to have. And so I do think that, like, outside of Jason 2, I do think that they've shown that, like, how tough it is to tame your subconscious, and the fact that people that have been, trained by a psychiatrist like Blair, who we'll get to, like, she can't do it. All of these people are trying, and they're failing miserably, and they are having a horrible time.
Well,
Um,
also, it doesn't seem like they even had this information before Blair went into the box or the other pilots went into the box. Only
right, so
Jason had this
everybody's had to
info.
figure it out themselves.
Right, and apparently they, even though you can still get to these worlds, and but yet there's always, like the very clear instance, Amanda, the whiteout, running out into the whiteout, like I was like, okay, this confirms something, but like it does seem like all the time since then they haven't been able to lock it down, so it almost like throw that theory out, like, oh, we're controlling it with our mind. But yet Blair came to the same conclusion, and even though she's not in anywhere that she wants to be.
But it's a yes, you control it with your mind, but unfortunately, your subconscious is part of that, and it is very tough to control that. Another interesting part of the rules that I think is a kind of on the confusing side, and it's probably not necessarily explained, but so they did explain something important, which is it only allows you to travel to adjacent worlds, with
Mm-hmm.
adjacent being worlds that you were born into.
Born or existed or would exist into, I think that's what.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so which most likely rules out the possibility of my dinosaur idea, unless somebody does actually, some genius does actually do a Jurassic Park and is able to, like, use DNA to rebuild dinosaurs, and that's in an infinite universes. I could imagine that maybe one of them could do that within our lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, who knows? What the interesting question that I think this kind of leads to is what is, and some of this is pedantic, and some of this is philosophical. So, like, what is the definition of you? So, going to kind of like the ship of Theseus, if you have a ship, and over time it's getting damaged, and so, bit by bit you have to, like, replace parts of it, because it's getting wear and tear. At some point, every single piece of the ship has been replaced. Is that still the same ship? One. And then two, you kept all that material from the original ship when you were replacing it, and you use that to build a new ship. I mean, it's going to be with old parts, so it's not going to be in great condition. But you use that to build a new ship. It's 100% from the original parts. Is that the ship of Theseus? Like, what? And I think where I kind of see this distinction is in in infinite parallel universes. While it's extremely unlikely, it's still just with infinity. It's possible that two different people that aren't your mom and dad, that have enough of the right genetic material in the right mix, could still produce something that has your exact DNA.
Hmm.
Is that you? If in one of these worlds they create cloning technology and they're able to like clone you, or build something, like build DNA from scratch and choose what goes somewhere, and some mad scientist builds you in a beaker, but you didn't actually, like, you weren't born into that world from your mom and dad. Is that you? And then kind of going to that line, then that kind of goes to, like, the, I don't know, going into, like, some kind of Freudian stuff as far as, like, the id and ego, and like who you are. To a certain extent, you could argue that the only you that you are is you that can observe you, not yous from other universes. Like, they may look like you and talk like you and have all the same experiences, but are they? So it's like, where's the line?
Well, yeah, and you bring up another good point. Here's another philosophical idea that if reincarnation is real, and you become your essence, your consciousness starts from one person, and then you die and you become, Cleopatra or Jason Alexander. Like, you still that person? Is it based on consciousness? Is it based on the cells of the DNA? Because you could
Right.
almost argue that your body and your consciousness could be two different things. And like
Yeah.
if the consciousness of like Jason that went to prison and Jason who didn't go to prison, could you even argue that they're the same person?
Yeah.
And we did see Jason walked through a door when he's first traveling through, and there is a creature there. Looked like a completely different creature, maybe a dominant species. And if this species exists, same with the little bugs. These bugs that
Right.
indefinitely eat people. Like, would would Jason even exist in that world? Would Blair exist in that world, or would her parents have been devoured instantly? And would they evolve alongside that like giant creature? Does it like there
Right.
are some holes in the theory, and you also speaking of rules with these bugs, the fact that how did they travel through the box? They didn't get the subconscious thing.
I Yeah, I kind of wondered about that. Like as soon as we saw the water go into the box, it made me ask the question of like, what happens if a being goes into the box? Can it still experience the other doorways, or does that potentially like lock the because they're observers? Like, does it lock the other doorways into a certain position? Which wouldn't that then be their world position? It does raise more questions than it answers. I do feel like that it did try and at least put some more rules so you can't just say like you can do whatever you want. You know, like they did put the rules about the world has to have to be adjacent. You can't just steal money because the serial numbers and it'll get flagged. Like I don't know if I still
Okay,
think that there's ways. I still think there's like Gold World where you can
yeah,
just go and take a gold bar.
or even
Um,
rob a place. Like if you're gonna go rob banks anyway, just rob a place that has gold bars.
right.
You know?
Bitcoin World. Steal somebody's. I got that wouldn't be on the right blockchain. There's ways around this. So I did feel like they did try and put more rules in order to show that this isn't like the Wild Wild West, and there are reasons why you can't just do whatever you want. You know, I don't know if they still make 100% complete sense to me, but they did put some rules around it. I did. There was one other. Now this wasn't like a science rule. This was something specific to the show and not the book. I haven't read the book, but I know it's not in the book, which is like the click sound. Obviously, there's not sounds in the book.
Actually, if you read the book, there's a part it goes click, and then that's how you know it switches
Because
Jason.
it has like those like birthday cards where it has like the string, and when it detects it's opened, there's a speaker and it like plays.
Yeah.
So when you open it to a page and it's switching to a different universe, it plays that sound. The book is a lot thicker because of that,
Well, it's
because
all
there's like 100 speakers in it.
well, it's also important in the book because when they're just talking about like the different Jasons, there's no distinguishing factor. Like you're just reading about each Jason, so they have to do the click in the book to show that it switches.
So here was my issue with the click sound. We've already talked, I think, in the previous video about the fact that like they're starting to thin it out. They're not
Yeah.
using it all the time. I don't like that because I think in the beginning they use that as a clear rule, like a clear way to establish we're in a different, we're switching universes. And so if we didn't hear that sound, we now know, and it's kind of like a rule that they've set in our mind that we're still in the same universe. And I think that was abused in this episode to make it seem like Jason 1 and Jason 2 are in the same worlds, because they at the end when Jason 1 is going into he's in the world where he's in jail. He's in the
Mm-hmm.
universe where he's in jail, and he's going into that house. We assume, because it keeps going back and forth between these scenes of like Jason 2 and Daniela, in the bathroom talking, and Jason 1 about to go in the house. And it's like, holy crap, they're in the same universe. We're not hearing the sounds. It keeps going back and forth between the two worlds. And then to me that was a cheap trick, because they made a rule
Right.
that sound means that we're switching, and the lack of that sound means we're not. And so in not using, and they did use that sound at least once in the episode,
They did.
so in not using that sound there, it was like very clearly trying to trick us to amp up our, like anxiety of what's about to happen, only to find out, oh no, he's in a different universe. I thought that was a cheap trick.
I did figure that he was not in the same universe because we're only on episode 5, and I feel there's going to be a lot more build up to get to that confrontation. But I agree. I do think that like either you commit to the click and have it every time, or you don't even have a click, because when they were first clicking and in the first episode, first 2 episodes, it was like every time. It was like so many clicks in the episode, which I think in the first our episode I didn't really care for that. And so when it just like fades out, then like even in the beginning there was clear evidence they looked different. Like one was beaten up, one was not beaten up. Like we knew we could tell them apart. So why put the click in there if you're going to fade it out? Makes no sense.
Yeah. So wasn't a huge fan of that. I felt like it was a cheap trick. And like you, I kind of I had a feeling that that wasn't necessarily the case, but I also had doubt. Like maybe they are in the same universe. And I think not hearing that click was part of it. And it definitely felt like they were trying to just like cheaply ratchet up the tension.
Mm-hmm.
Since we at least mentioned, like the click in the book, I think that's actually a good segue into, I read an article this week about the show. It was an interview with Blake Crouch, the author of the book. And he's also, so he started the book. He wasn't finished writing the book. He was a little over 100 pages, started shopping the rights to be able to, produce it. Because he didn't have it fully written out, I think Sony swooped in for movie rights. By the time the book was written and he had a decent number of pages, he wanted to be part of the adaptation and wrote a number of scripts, never did better than like a B, in like the quality. He felt like he knew he was going to have to pull stuff out of it, but he felt like he was stripping out too much. And finally, at some point, Sony opened up an avenue to instead produce it as a show. And instantly he was like, I know the beats for all the episodes, like how to break this up, how this fits into each of the episodes. And it also allowed him to tweak some things. So I think the book was from primarily or only from like Jason Prime's perspective, or Jason 1 as we've been saying. And so it doesn't show the struggles that Jason 2 is having to try to live in Jason 1's world. Mm-hmm. I thought that, I do think that's kind of an interesting perspective. And then also, I guess, many readers of the book felt like Amanda wasn't fleshed out enough and they wanted more Amanda. So he wrote in more Amanda into the show. And so to that point, I think I read this, that he considers the show more canon than the book.
Huh.
Very interesting. The interesting thing here is I feel like most people don't get a redo. If their thing does get an adaptation, somebody else is generally adapting it. So it's not like you get a chance to fix your mistakes. It's like somebody else is adding their spin on it, This is almost like his trip through the box.
Oh, this is his second chance. The road not taken.
The road not taken. He didn't say that, but that's what I got out of it. Is like how many other people get that opportunity? Like you can't, once you've written a book, a majority of the people are going to buy the book in the beginning. You can't rewrite the book. Like nobody's going to want to read something that's basically the same but better.
Yeah.
Most people don't get to work on the adaptation, so in that case, it's like you had your shot. I also
don't know if this adaptation is better. I don't know.
I was enjoying this episode a lot more.
I agree. I definitely thought this was the better episode. I don't like that it took 5 episodes to get to a better episode.
Right. There's only 9 episodes, which means like halfway through this episode we got to the halfway mark, and so it took us like almost all the way to the halfway mark to get to a better point. I still don't feel like it's spectacular, like I'm blown away. So to only get to something where it's like, oh yeah, that's better, And I'm not hating it. I know, like, it probably sounds like to outsiders that maybe we're trashing the show, and I definitely don't hate it. But when you're looking at something this closely and like really picking it apart and trying to analyze it, I don't feel like this one. I wouldn't mind binging this one. I think.
I think, yeah, if all the episodes came out, binged it all the way through, maybe. But I don't know. Like, okay, like with Severance, I can go back and watch Severance. I don't feel like I would ever go back and watch the show again. Like, this is, a one and done show for me. I don't even know if they get greenlit for a second season, like how like excited I'm gonna be for that second season. Where like, even like Silo, which isn't Severance tier, like excited for a second season of Silo. But this one, I don't. It seems for like a big thriller show. We keep hitting the same beats again of like, how does this work? You know, they tease Blair Kaplan in like the third episode, and
Mm-hmm.
Jason 2 runs into her, but there's no like payoff for it. That like he doesn't even secretly like to the audience acknowledge like, oh, I know Blair, and then this Jason is like, oh, Blair, in my world you're this, and like, so there is that acknowledgement, but we're just like doing the same beat again in this episode.
You this However, I did feel like this one felt more like a trip into the psyche, like an exploration of the psyche, and what it means to be, what are what are unconscious thoughts and biases and hopes and dreams. And in exploring the psyche, I think they really got into a number of interesting and very sad arcs. And I felt like for once I actually was really feeling something in this episode, you know, in the show. So we had a number of sad arcs here, starting with kind of like Blair's. I think she has been psychologically tortured by this box. It was sad watching that. Your
I
face says otherwise.
Well, okay, I wanted to feel for Blair,
Yeah,
but the problem is that we're 5 episodes deep. She has
yeah.
this amazing relationship with Amanda that we don't see, so it's not, we only see them reuniting, and then she's put off by her. Like, we didn't see Blair go through these challenges. We just see that she's upset by it, and she doesn't want to go back in the box, and she'd
But
rather live in a,
the way she like reacts, I felt spoke volumes about, like, she didn't need to talk about her experiences, just seeing the way that she, like, when Amanda is saying, "Hey, come back with us," and pushes it a little bit too much, and Blair raises her voice and shouts and is like, "I'm not going back in that box." That that was a clear tell of what she went. Like, they didn't need to have her say what happened. We can see it in her. When Amanda and Jason go to leave, and Amanda goes to hug her, and Blair like steps back. Like, even that is uncomfortable.
but that
That to
was
me is a clear sign, which was also confusing and made it not nail it, because when they first met, they hugged and Amanda touched her face, and there was a very very touching moment. So she's not scared of touch.
right,
So they didn't nail it.
and she had the moment with Amanda where like Amanda was like trying to be like, I'm so sorry this happened to you, and then Blair reacts in a way saying like, you know, don't blame yourself, like blah 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 blah. Like, it's almost like it seemed like she came to terms with what she went through, but she just didn't want to go back in. But then it showed her like that she was not okay, and so that's why like for me that whole interaction with Blair didn't hit as hard for me. And I think that like one of the main things Blair did was set up almost another potential sad arc with Amanda, where Amanda is worldless now.
Yes.
And okay, so they set up this premise, right? Where she says
Mm-hmm.
to Amanda, "Hey, you don't have a world anymore. You most likely won't be able to go to his world because there's probably another version of you there. You can't go back to your old world because that's a whole mess. So you're effectively worldless."
Right.
And it seems to me that they found a perfect world for Amanda to fit into. And I mean,
I see where you're going at, but also it kind of messed up. Like,
but if you think about it, all the shit that
yes,
Blair went
yeah, that
through,
is yes,
that's crazy, and Amanda won't be able to stay in Jason's. It's like, okay, well,
yes.
here's an opportunity for you to be like, okay, I'm getting off this train. This is a crazy story.
Like she can definitely go back to that world, and that can be possibly where she settles. I think it would be better if she went to a world where the other Amanda died in a way that people didn't know about it, versus like that seemed traumatizing to her other universe mom. Traumatizing at first, and then like who knows what kind of gears are going in her other universe mom's head about like what this means about the afterlife and whatever, but like whole religions could spring out of this or solidify certain thoughts, or but who knows what it could drive a person to do, of like, this person's dead and now here they are physically in front of you. It was
But the chances of you finding the world where Amanda just dies when you get there to be like, oh, they didn't know she died, or to find a missing Amanda, or find a world that doesn't have an Amanda in it that she could live in, it was right there. Otherwise, we're going
yeah,
back in the box and we're playing with giant hornets, giant
yeah,
monsters, giant tidal waves, atmosphere lacking. I felt like that was your off ramp, Amanda. So you get whatever comes to you.
especially with their luck of controlling the box. Like that's yeah, that was potentially a good off ramp.
Because I'm gonna be
um
really disappointed if
mhm.
Jason's trying to figure out where he needs to go, and then we see like a switcheroo from Amanda, where she then all of a sudden has this, I need to figure out where I'm going, and now I'm going to jeopardize where you're going because now I'm having a selfish motivation of where I need to go, when she had a perfectly good off ramp.
I do want to give her some kudos in this episode, as far as I did feel like she redeemed herself in this episode. She wasn't just the damsel in distress that was there for Jason to save her, but instead she was actually the one that was pushing to make rational decisions, and in a way that made sense for her as a psychologist. Of, Jason just wanted to like keep opening doors, and she's like, we can't do it right now. And he's like, well, we don't want to waste another vial. And she's like, no, we need to make, you know, not opening a door is a calculated investment. I guess like I think she was pointing out the fact that it's better for them to gather their psyche and like concentrate on their thoughts, even if they go through more vials, than just like randomly opening doors while they are emotionally unstable. And then she was also the one who was pointing out how not just your conscious thoughts but your subconscious thoughts were having an impact. So like she made that kind of connection. So I did feel like she was, pulling her weight in this episode and redeeming herself.
I agree. I agree.
Another one of the kind of sad arcs that they had here, I felt like the pandemic world, seeing Jason emotionally connect with a Daniela he knows is not his, but still wanting to do right by her, even though it could potentially have a great cost to him. I think that does show like who this Jason is compared to Jason 2.
Right. I mean, they him and Daniela clearly had a similar, memory of, that infamous trip where they, went to Yellowstone. They had a great time. They could relate to that. And, if Daniela wasn't going to die, could it spawn more religions too? Because she saw him die, you know?
She saw him carted off.
Right.
He might not have actually died. They
Well,
might have been trying to like save him, but he's probably gonna die in some place.
I thought that she meant that he had already took him
Maybe
to
I don't.
die, because like it did seem like there were so many people that they were only coming to get dead bodies.
I don't know, but that I did feel like this was kind of like a touching and melancholic scene, and I did feel like this pointed at one of my theories of why Jason 2 is so much better at piloting the box. So here's the, and once again, I still don't understand how Layton isn't like a wrench thrown in the gears.
I don't know.
Let's just ignore that. But as
Okay.
far as why Jason 2 is a better pilot than Jason 1, I have two theories. We'll get to the second theory in a little bit. Theory one, and they're both. It's like both of them together. It's not one or the other. One, Jason 2, nothing to lose, everything to gain. He has wealth and power. He can go to any world he wants. He's not attached. He's not tethered to anything in his life. He's made that clear.
Mm-hmm.
He left his girlfriend behind forever. He left his friend-ish Leighton behind forever. You know, he's like, screw all of these people. Screw everybody in my world. I'm going for this one thing. So for him, it's like he has absolutely nothing to lose. He doesn't care about anything in his world. And everything to gain if he gets it right. And there's a number of worlds that he'd be fine with, I'm sure. He doesn't even have to get the perfect one.
Mm-hmm.
He just needs like one of the ones where he gets Daniela and gets that life and that choice, you know? Versus part of why Jason 1 keeps screwing up is because he has nothing to gain and everything to lose, you know? And so, like, that's one of the things that is, like, always there in the back of his mind is this crushing idea of not being able to get back to his family, losing his family, you know, in different horrific ways. Like, there's only one option that he wants.
Right.
In a literal infinite multiverse.
Right. It almost wouldn't make sense if he went to a world where Max survived, because then he wouldn't have had a whole relationship with Max. Like, he has a very specific world he needs to get back to. And in a giant multiverse where infinite possibilities of where you could be, it is very difficult to get to that exact location.
So, like, when you have... And this kind of gets back to, like, I think the kind of psychological aspect of this show. When you have everything to lose, it's hard not to think about that in, like, uncontrolled in your subconscious, to worry about that. Versus, I think Jason 2 has, like, excitement about, like, what world am I going to, you know, to get to? What can I gain from this? Because I'm not going to lose anything.
Right. You know, another reason why Jason 2, leaving Leighton completely out of it, but another reason why Jason 2 could be a better traveler, he's traveling alone. The box is only using one consciousness, where, you know, Amanda, even the story about the cancer, his mom's cancer, Amanda could have been thinking about that when he opened the door. Like,
right.
There's two people and two psyches that you have to worry about in tandem to make sure that the door opens correctly.
Right. I did like in the pandemic world, when we're, you know, kind of talking about like the sadness and the kind of the melancholy of this. I did like the parting shot as they're driving away from the house. You know, they didn't actually show Daniela taking the morphine, but we assume that, you know, Daniela kind of escaped this life on her own terms, and there's great sadness in it. And I did like that the car shot as they're traveling along the road is from, like, next to the wheel of the car.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it very much was... It wasn't like your typical, you know, third-person omniscient narrator, which is generally an above shot. You know, this, like, this being that can see everything and therefore is able to narrate what's going on because they have such a great view of it. But instead, it seemed like the kind of out-of-body experience you have when you are blue, you know, where it's like you're there but you're not there.
Mm-hmm.
And that shot to me very much kind of mirrored that sentiment of, like, you're technically traveling on this road somewhere, but it's almost like you're not there, you know. I did actually really like that shot. I thought that was an interesting way to kind of show that sadness.
I appreciated that we finally saw Jason showing sadness for losing a Daniela, when the other time, when he was even connecting with that Daniela in a romantic way, he didn't seem to have a lot of emotion.
Yeah.
Where this one, it showed that he was, like, wounded for, like, a day, you know, while he was dealing with the loss with her. But you could make the argument that he was the one that actually had to, like, kill her versus, you know, the other Jason just saw her die.
Right. And Okay, so we've been tiptoeing around this a little bit. So let's go ahead and take off our tap dancing shoes,
No.
our ballet shoes. Let's stop tiptoeing.
Okay, okay.
Let's put on our clogs and let's river dance our way to Jason. Probably nobody remembers what river dance was.
I
Um,
love Lord of the Dance.
Michael Flatley. So let's put on our clogs and let's river dance our way over to Jason 2. What are your thoughts on it, especially now that we have like the extra perspective of like this isn't necessarily in the book. So this is interesting information we didn't have before.
Which information? That oh, that
Like
Jason.
seeing his
Oh,
perspective.
his
Like
perspective.
what are your thoughts on him?
Well, it does seem that he has really locked down, first of all, how to travel through the box. Like, he has
Yeah.
really used the box. We see that even if he were to be successful with his new plan of he wants to seal up the box so Jason 1 can't come back through, it does seem
That,
that.
by the way, sorry, I just want to jump in really quickly on that. When he said that, that was like a punchline at the end of the episode. That was a great chance for a needle drop, and the song actually sounded like a needle drop. It was like a very loud, heavy sound, and then it just went to whatever composed music. That was like a shot in the gut, you know, and that felt like the chance for perfect needle drop moment.
Right.
Didn't happen. Anyway, sorry, I just wanted to throw that in.
So it seems that this Jason is selfish, right? He
Yeah,
has selfish motivations. He only
yes.
wants to get Daniela. Like, it's all he really seems to care about. But this, it doesn't even seem like this Daniela is gonna want him back because
Right.
he's not making decisions with her, which is the whole premise of why he didn't get Daniela in the first place. Like, he's
Mm-hmm.
creating his life. He just wants to have her as like a side piece trophy, but not accounting for her hopes, her dreams, her wants, her wishes. And so, even if he seals up this box, I do think that there's going to be a point that he would lose Daniela and Charlie anyway, almost like prison Jason.
Yeah. I think I finally had a revelation this episode, for me at
Ooh,
least,
okay.
that finally made me not at all like him. He's an asshole, but at least understand potentially why he would do this, because it didn't make sense to me how he could not see that he's not really connecting with these people because he's trying to live his life in this other person's world. I think he's a psychopath.
I mean,
And for me, so like psychopaths oftentimes can fit in and actually come off as very charming because
mm-hmm.
one of the techniques, so they don't have empathy, but one of the tricks that they'll oftentimes do is they'll mirror people. And when people are being mirrored, they oftentimes feel like there's a connection. And so psychopathic people can oftentimes be very charming and pleasant to be with. And I think we saw that early on where he's vibing with Daniela. They're
The dinner
they're
party.
getting dirty together. The dinner party, he's making friends with his son Charlie. But then there are some of these moments where you would expect any human with basic empathy to understand what's right to do in a situation. Like every year, I know it's not a happy celebration, but like every year we do focus on the family member we lost, and he's like, I'm gonna buy a car.
I'm gonna buy a car. Gonna quit my job. We got investors.
Yeah, I wrote it down so many times. There were so many things I saw in this episode, and I was like, he's a psychopath. He cannot make real connections. He can certainly emulate them, and that once again I think would like really explain why he can control the box, because it's, I mean, what would you be worried about losing if you just don't care for people, whatever. That
Yeah,
moment when he went back to get like the bags, and I don't remember what her name was, but the person that saw him, you know,
I don't think she had a
that was
name.
such, no, he did say her name.
Oh, did
Who
he?
knows what it was? Anyways, but like that moment, I felt like that was so painful to watch, because you know that he's like, I'm piecing out, you know? And she's like, "Oh, we finally like you're there and this happened and like let's and he's like just walking backwards.
It's like, I'm gonna go.
Yeah. To me, like so many of these things just like screamed psychopath, and then that just like
No click. There was no
I
click.
no click, but it all made sense. Then I was like, yeah, I could see somebody that meets those traits that can be that clueless as to like how they're raising all these red flags. Those are my thoughts.
With that, I mean, with that argument, I would say that Leighton 2 would probably
Mm-hmm.
be on a similar path. You know, like, he seems as close to Jason 2 as anybody traveling the box. And it seems like he's had like, out of everybody that we've seen that's a pilot, other than the two rando guys that we will probably see at some point, I'm assuming, he had a rough time navigating the box, navigating the corridors. He's all beat up.
Right.
So maybe, like, if you think about his mentality, he should be able to find what he desires pretty easily as well, because he has nothing. He even says when he's going in the box, he has nothing to lose,
Right.
or there's nothing for me here anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. He's like completely. He's all in on burning it. So what? Jason 2 had. I think he said he had like 10 serums or something like that, which at a million apiece would have been 10 mil, and then he got 50 more. Does Leighton really have $60 million?
I mean, if
He's not just rich; he is.
he's loaded. I mean, if he's a trust
He's
fund
loaded.
baby from Velocity Labs, and Velocity Labs
But
is
his dad is still alive, and his dad is the main benefactor. Like his dad got Velocity,
mm-hmm.
so that means that the 60 mil that he's willing to give to Jason is a portion of the family wealth.
Yeah. I mean, we did see he
That
was
is,
living a lavish lifestyle.
yeah. I was when Jason heard the number of like 10 million and he wasn't like, that's it. Like just write me the check right now.
Take your 10
And
vials.
he's
Let's
like,
go.
I can get I can get 50 more. That blew my mind that he has that much. He's gonna go in with no money and have to be able to, following whatever rules Jason has given him,
Yeah.
is gonna have to be able to live in these world. Like you can't just, who knows. That's not Jason 2's problem.
Also, slight nitpicking. We
Yes.
reverted to the drug that we can't drink anymore, and we had to show exactly how to inject the drug. So Leighton now knows the true way to travel through the box.
Yeah, I did think that montage was interesting, where it's like, here, let me show you how to use this. It's the most high tech like needle I've ever seen. You don't need to teach somebody how to. It's almost like the insulin needles. There's no lesson to it. Like just stab yourself with it.
Right.
There probably is something to the insulin needle. Because I'm really sorry. Like if you're in that community and I'm badly misspeaking this, it seems like a simple thing that you don't have to line up. I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but in this case, it literally has like a red and green light, where when it goes green, you
It just
press the
goes.
button, and yeah, that's it. I don't feel like you need to do a montage of that.
Well, but also, if you can just drink it, why aren't you just drinking it?
Yeah, I don't know on that.
That makes no sense. If you can just drink this drug to let you travel the box, it seems way more foolproof than injecting your arm. Why not do that?
I don't know.
One little nitpicky thing, but
I don't know.
like, what is Leighton's plan with the box now that he knows Jason's gonna close it up? Like, he's just like, cool, I'm leaving this world behind. I'm just gonna go to these
I mean,
other worlds.
I think they've said it a few times. I think Jason explicitly asked him something like, "Are you okay leaving this world behind?" And Leighton's like, "Yeah." Leighton has nothing in this world. I still don't know what the plan is, because he's not gonna have his millions. So
And he can't
I
come
don't
back
know
to
what
this
the
world
plan is,
because we're locking it up.
right? So I don't know what his plan is. I don't know what his plan is.
I did like the analogy that Leighton used when he was speaking on video games, and he used it for his own life, right? Like,
Yes.
He's used money to just get whatever he wants as like a cheat code, and now he's bored with life because he has the infinite cheat codes. But
Yeah, yeah.
also, the box is like a cheat code in itself, where I don't like this life, I'm gonna take the box and go travel the next world and find something I do want. Like that's like a super cheat code, and it's like Leighton. I do feel
It's less of a only if you can actually operate it, which I still don't know how. I I have my reasons for why Jason 2 can operate it. I still don't know how Leighton is going to operate it. And maybe Leighton actually can't operate it. He just like he's been able to like wipe his mind for 5 seconds while Jason operates it. And so once he goes in the box, he's going to be screwed. And maybe Jason 2 really doesn't care about that because he'll have his money at that point. But if you know how to control it, yeah, 100% cheat code. If you if there's any issues with the controls, like considering the wild worlds it can put you in, it's more like a really really questionable game of chat roulette.
true.
Where it's like you don't know what kind of it's going to end up on the other side of that webcam.
That's true. That, yeah. But I could also see the analogy being for Jason too as well, because he has this cheat code to hack life,
Yes.
and he is seeming that he's bored with this life, like just being a
Mm-hmm.
professor. He wants more. Like, Jason 2 almost seems like he will never be
Bored with his
satisfied.
life. I don't want to be a professor anymore. I've been this for like 10 days. I hate this job.
I can't do it. I want to build a box again.
Like, why would you go to that world? Give it a chance.
Yeah.
I don't feel like he gave it a chance. Anyway, but
That's
we've already
psychopathic
talked.
behavior. Psychopathic behavior.
It is. It is.
He can't be like, what joys can I find out of this life? A simple
Right.
professor life. I want money.
Yeah. I did think it was interesting seeing the differences in these worlds. That there's more to it than what we thought. Originally, it seemed like Jason 1's world. The difference from that and Jason 2 is everything that changed from them deciding to have or not have the baby and any repercussions that came from that. But it turns out that Blair was whitelisted to a college and therefore ended up with a completely different career. And I don't think that had anything to do with Jason and Daniela's decision. But then an even like weirder one, there's this Candy Dares that exists in this world and doesn't exist in that. So these worlds aren't quite as close as we originally thought.
Yeah. I took that, just like there's going to be probably slight differences in their worlds. Like I think that you could argue that there is the exact same world as, the Jason 2's world without the dares, right? So like
Right.
it's the exact same where Jason 2 builds the box, he goes travels through. There's no dares that exist there. And like maybe that there's
Yeah.
one as different as they have like 100 different candies and none of the candies are the same.
And I did actually think that this was clever and made sense with the multiverse because if there are literal infinite of these, then there should be so many that are there's so many differences and so many like almost complete replicas. And so seeing another Blair coming out with those like murder wasps makes you realize that there are who knows how many of these other universes where other Jasons and Blairs are going through the box. It's not just this one.
Yeah. Well, I think we saw that with the episode 4, 3 or 4.
But that Jason didn't actually get into the box. Like so this is pointing out that like there there are other ones traveling,
Well,
which makes sense.
that Jason didn't get into the box, but there was
Yeah.
a Jason before that that was there that
Oh, that
brought
would've
that Jason there.
Yes. So I did like that. It also has an interesting unintended consequence potentially. That Blair that we met might not actually be Amanda's Blair.
Yeah. It could have the
Maybe
very first Blair that came out with the bugs. It could have been that Blair.
It could have been that one.
Like, and
Exactly.
just this Blair remembers an Amanda from her world.
So I did think that was a clever nod to the fact that when there's infinite worlds, you're not going to only have one that's going to have managed to get through, and it's unlikely that like there's only going to be one difference between the world that then has a cascade of effects.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there could be differences completely unrelated that also have a cascade of effects. You know,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I thought that was an interesting choice.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we saw that there's multiple Blairs traveling. There's probably multiple Jason 2s, multiple Jason 1s and Amandas that made it through. Maybe
Right?
Jason 1s that didn't make it with Amandas. And then don't even get me started on Alex and the other guy who went through. How many of those
Right?
guys we got going through?
And who knows? Who knows?
Okay, I
Okay.
didn't
Okay.
like the pandemic world with their explanation of the pandemic. You know, I think
Okay.
we had an era, like, especially right off the heels of a global pandemic that we had here that was through aerosol, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Not through bodily fluids. Like, I think the
Right.
state of the world for a disease that is spread through bodily fluids was way
Yeah.
more post-apocalyptic
Yes.
than it should have been.
That's so easy to avoid. Don't touch
Right.
unless there's an and I unless it's one of those and no, I can't. I was gonna say unless it's one of those things where it's like my bodily fluids. If I touch a surface and then you touch the surface, it can spread that way because there are those like contact ones that are definitely not aerosol but still can survive on surfaces for a period of time. But the person didn't say like be careful of what you touch.
Right.
It's just like don't touch her because it's through body contact. Yeah, I agree because like what is it? Ebola. I think Ebola is through fluids. I
Yeah.
don't think it's like just direct contact, but it's like through fluids. I guess there was at least one version of it that I think did travel somewhat like through aerosols, but for the most part, I think most of the variations of Ebola have been transferred through fluids. And the issue in a lot of like third worldish countries is that I think oftentimes they like handle the dead and make sure that they like want to perform the correct rites and all these other things, and so it just continues to propagate because like these people that are trying to take care of the dead end up further spreading it versus realizing like just stop touching people
Yeah.
for a period of time until it goes. And yeah, I don't. Yes, I agree. It does not need to be this post-apocalyptic world. It's like wear gloves
Wear
and
gloves.
don't touch stuff.
Right. And that seems pretty easy to avoid. Like an
Yeah.
easy one. But, you know, I liked I know why they did it. It is to create this world that's not like yours, a pandemic world where things are really bad, but yet not give our main characters traveling through it a chance to get it. You know, because if it was just aerosol, then you'd be like, well, why didn't they get sick? They were in the world, like. So
Also,
I get it.
that was written in the book before the pandemic, and Blake Crouch actually left it out of the initial screenplay for the show when he was writing it. And one of the actors or something like that was like, "Where's like I love that from the book. Where is that?" And put it back. Like he took it out because he thought that it was inappropriate with the pandemic. And then somebody was like, "I love that. Where is it?" And so he wrote it back in. I do think it leads to like a very touching scene of how caring Jason 1 is versus like the opposite of that of like how much of a sociopath Jason 2 is. Where Jason 1 can care for a Danielle that he knows is not his. And it's not like this like lust type love and desire that like Jason 2 has where he's like I want to screw you. He's like he even wants to be there for these touching moments even knowing that she's going to die and he's not going to get anything from it, he still cared. Like, so I did think that that was an important kind of emotional moment,
Yeah.
and shows you the kind of character.
I think overall the scene was great. Just my one little nitpick is the virus didn't make sense, but it is what
One
it
hundred
is.
percent, I agree with that. Yeah, yeah, I think so. I mean, we saw that in, what was it, Utopia, where there was a potential virus that was going to be used to like create a situation, and now that we've actually lived this, watching it, it was the U.S. Utopia.
Yeah,
There were
yeah, yeah.
parts of it that were just so laughably silly, where
Right,
it's like
right.
you never could have known that we would know. So like we would all be experts
Right.
in pandemics, because before that, I don't know, maybe if
Oh,
like if
because
you're
they
not,
put the bunny in the bag. The infected bunny. They put it
I
like in
don't
that
rem-
bag or cage.
I don't remember how it worked, but it was the whole part about the thing that they were going to spread was just like completely laughable with all the experience that we have now. Because before that, I don't know, maybe you read or watched The Hot Zone, but other than that, like, how much did people really know? And even then, like, did people really know about these things?
Right. This nitpick
Oh, yeah.
is not
Yeah.
going to be.
Nitpick. Nitpick. Nitpick.
As an animal person and like
Yeah.
understanding like,
Animal person, like, you are a person and an animal?
well, that and I like animals and I like
Okay.
how
As an
animals,
animal loving person. Okay, I'm with you now.
and I am an animal. But
We all are.
these flying bugs
Yes.
reproduce exponentially and eat living people and they like
Yeah.
consume it so quickly. It seems like they
Yes.
would just die. They would just die out as a species because it would grow to a point where it would just consume all living life on the planet because
Yes.
they're growing exponentially. Not they breed quickly, exponentially, meaning they are going to run out of food and just die. Why didn't they die in the world that they were in beforehand? Why aren't they going to die in this world? But
Okay,
oh, please.
here here is an interesting side effect of infinite realities and a number of people running around between them. I think there is the possibility for a trait to spring up naturally and then be selected through natural selection, which is able to propagate as far as like species that can survive that, because there are enough universes where those species exist, and in enough of those universes, people that go into it at some point while that species is still alive, for them to be able to follow that person into the box and into another world. So basically, they would have adapted to the multiverse. Like their adaptation of survival is that there are enough of these universes where people are running around in between them, that, and yeah, like a number of them end up dying out in worlds and nobody comes to that universe, but they also like propagate into enough worlds where other people are going into and then running into other worlds that they propagate into other worlds. There's just enough of that that they're able to like continue to survive in a few pockets, where most pockets, they like most universes, they die out when their food source dies out. I
Yeah,
think it's like the
but
possibly like the turtle situation, where it's like thousands and thousands of eggs and they just need a few to survive.
which is
So it's like in
but
thousands and thousands of worlds, they eventually die out. But in a few of those, somebody goes in at the right time and takes them to some other worlds, and they're able to like continue doing their thing.
maybe, but I with the species that propagates exponentially, the amount of food that they would need a constant flow of people coming into their universe to be a successful species. Otherwise, they would just die out so quickly because they eat everything so quickly. They're reproducing exponentially, and I just to have it just be based on one, this box was only created when Jason created it. You know, we haven't seen evidence of other multiverse travelers. Why this species would have to evolve alongside this box? It would have to get enough people coming into their world and being able to transfer into another box world. That as an evolutionary trait, that seems very
Yeah.
difficult to have all of these things line up with a multiverse aspect trait, like selecting the trait.
I think with all of the loosey goosey rules that we've seen that like don't make too much sense if you think too much about them, and bad techno babble, which really doesn't make sense when you think about it.
Don't think too hard.
To me, what's that?
Don't think too hard.
To me, this comes off as somebody that has read about a bunch of science, but not necessarily in too deep, and has tried to like cobble together the words that they know versus some other things that we've seen which feel like they have a very good grasp of the science and like really thought out the consequences. I think Three Body Problem, it is wild how well reasoned the science is in that show versus this one just feels like it like I hate this whole superposition thing. I don't understand how putting you in a superposition lets you see other multi and I think I've read something about higher dimensions and maybe it's fleshed out a little bit more in the book. It still just seems like technobabble word salad where I'd prefer that they don't even try to explain. Yeah, it seems like it's not. It's like a kid playing with science words and being like, "Oh, that's fun. Let me play with that and not really think through the consequences."
Yeah, I almost wish that it would be more like there's a box, it does something. Here's a fluid. With this fluid combination with the box, you can go into different universes. But just say that. But when you're saying superposition, liminal space, or, you know, and then you like put the rules in like the box closes for 3 minutes, and then it's like, okay, well, how does that make sense? And with the water in the very opening scene, right?
Yeah.
We
Oh
saw
yeah. I have a thought on this, but
we
I don't.
saw with when Amanda opens the door to go into the whiteout
Yeah.
that Jason was not in the box position, and when he did it, he like gets like yeeted to where the front of the door is because he was not in line with the hallway corridor.
Yeah.
With all that water inside that box, that like it's not going into superposition, so it wouldn't feel the corridors or like it wouldn't save you. And then as soon as you open the door, all that water would have been pushed back up in there, and yeah, it could have got let out there, but just doesn't quite add up with the rules of the box.
Yeah, my issue with that scene was that if it's like that raging of a water flow that's filling it up that quickly and obviously moving, to on the only two directions it can on this infinite corridor, there would be such a strong current away from the door. I don't think they'd be able to hold it. They'd just be ripped down the corridor.
Yeah.
I don't so yeah, I didn't quite see that like yeah, it didn't quite make sense in the end if you think too much about any of it.
We see the box drop down. The pressure on
Yes.
being able to close that, like as fast as they were sinking, the pressure of closing that door would have been very difficult.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
their bodies as they're falling would have experienced pretty intense pressure, and if they're not clearing their ears could have serious
Right.
ruptures.
Yeah.
It's a whole
Yeah.
mess.
There's yes. Yes.
But that's just
Yes.
little nitpicks. That's
It it's not, the there's an art to this kind of stuff.
mm-hmm.
So there are some worlds where the science or the magic or whatever it is very well defined and there's very strong rules about things and it lives within those rules. And I'm not saying everybody has to do that because there's also the opposite of that, which is like the if you think of some of the magical worlds of Hayao Miyazaki, these worlds are fantastical, and we see glimpses of things that clearly use some type of like some type of magic, some type of rules. There's no explanation of any of this stuff, and and it's done in a beautiful way. So there's ways to do both sides of it. Like if you want to have a well explained rule based world, then you need to think through those rules well and make sure you follow them. And there, I think most people don't do a great job of thinking them through and sticking to them. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you oftentimes see, like, especially with, and I know that this is going more towards like magic ish, but when you think of like superheroes, I feel like they kind of make rules, but then they just like break them whenever they want, and all of a sudden the superhero can do this with their power that they couldn't do, you know, earlier. And it's like they just do whatever they want, even though they kind of like made some rules. I don't like that. If you're gonna make some rules, think them through, follow them,
Stick with them, yeah.
stick with them, make sure they're thorough. There's the other side. You don't have to explain the rules. You can just create this amazing world, and if you do it well enough, we can just go along for the ride and be like, this is none of it makes any sense, but it also doesn't break any rules because we haven't seen any of the rules yet.
Right.
So we're down with it.
Telling a compelling story with compelling characters, I feel like you can lax on the rules a bit. But if
I
you
wish they wouldn't try and explain any of this science. I wish they would. I know that that still wouldn't fix the bugs because like the but I think it would fix a lot of my issues with like the techno babble.
yeah, no, I agree.
Is like don't try and explain any of the rules. Just don't try and explain any of the rules.
Yeah, I think that if the story was compelling, the characters were good, then I would be fine without the rules. But I think because I there was such blatant disrespect from the rules early on
Mm-hmm.
that it pushed me to be in this nitpicky mode of being like,
I'm
well,
with.
this doesn't make sense, this doesn't make sense. And I think that that does a disservice to it because this episode, I do feel like, was genuinely the best episode of all the episodes so far, but fell flat because I'm still in this like I'm frustrated with the rules of it.
Right. Right. If this is where it started was at this level of quality, then we'd give it some more leeway. You
Mm-hmm.
know, versus at this point, like the pitchforks are already out,
Yeah,
the torches are lit.
the tiki torches.
It's the you know it's tough to quell the mob once it's formed, and then it's tough not to shine a light on everything because at that point you're wearing the critical glasses, and at that point it's hard not to versus like when you're when you're in love and you're wearing like the rose tinted glasses. It's so easy to overlook things because you're like, oh, I love this, and so you're looking over here and you miss this like issue, and then you're looking over here, I love this, and you miss this like,
It's hard to see the red flags when you're wearing
yeah,
rose-colored glasses.
oh yeah.
But with that, I think our journey has come to an end. Thank you folks so much for joining along with us. Next week we will be doing Dark Matter episode 6. So come back next Monday and we'll have a new episode for you. I'm Mark. This is Sterling.
Thanks.